All right, I think it's time we'll start the webinar. So I'd like to welcome everyone to our monthly FlowForge webinar. My name's Ian Scarrett, and really excited about the topic for today's webinar. Rob Marcer, who's our FlowForge developer advocate, is going to be leading the webinar. He's going to be talking about getting started with Node-RED dashboards. Lots of people use Node-RED dashboards. And so it's going to be a great webinar for people who want to kind of see how Rob approaches them and kind of get tips and kind of guidance on how to get going. A few things to kind of go over before we kind of get into it. The session is being recorded. So if you're not comfortable with that, please feel free to drop off. We will have lots of time to do Q&A at the end. What I'd encourage everyone to do is ask questions in the Q&A pod. Please don't ask them in the chat because we can lose the questions pretty easily in the chat. So if you ask them in the Q&A, we'll get to them near the end. So without much further ado, I'm going to turn over to Rob, and it's over to you now, Rob. Okay.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming along today. Really appreciate it. So before I get into showing some techniques for dashboard, a little bit about me. So I discovered Node-RED during the COVID-19 pandemic, when certainly in the UK, we all had a lot of time to kill at home. First thing I did was automated all of the things in my house. So for instance, my home heating is all entirely run by Node-RED, and as relevant to what we're talking about today, the controls for that home heating system is all done within Node-RED dashboard. As things started to get back to some level of relative normality in the UK with regards to COVID, when offices were open again, I took the knowledge that I'd gained back into my day job, and implemented everything we needed to use Node-RED in production. So the infrastructure, DevOps pipelines, etc. What we then worked on was using Node-RED to link various different SaaS platforms together. So taking data from one major SaaS platform, pushing it to another. Area was around customer relationship management, EPOS, so electronic point of sale or till systems in restaurants and bars and hotels, business intelligence and e-commerce. So I did quite a lot of work then in a commercial setting with Node-RED. I joined FlowForge in last year, 2022. Because I really like Node-RED and I really wanted to take the opportunity to work on furthering it, helping people understand how to use it. And I really like what FlowForge is doing in support of people being able to use Node-RED in a commercial setting. So what is Node-RED dashboard? So it's a low-code way, built a custom node, which you can very easily install in Node-RED, that allows you to build dashboards or HMIs, as they're often referred to, so human-machine interfaces. So it's the most popular custom node available for Node-RED. I checked a few days ago, and it's getting in excess of 25,000 downloads per week. It's been in that top spot for quite a while. I think it's actually a few years. It's incredibly popular, the most popular custom node that you can install into a Node-RED instance. What's good about it is not only can you create interfaces that show data, which you've got in your flows, so graphs or text output, gauges, etc., but you can also create interactive elements. So you can allow people who are viewing your dashboards to put in text or press buttons to trigger things within flows you've created, which makes it really quite versatile for building quite complex user interfaces. One point to make: sadly, it's no longer in active development. That doesn't. I'm talking about dashboard, to be totally clear. It doesn't mean that we have to stop using it. The problem is one of the underlying frameworks it's built upon itself is no longer being maintained or supported. There's been a lot of discussion recently about, is there a way, well, are there any good alternatives that people could perhaps consider using? And there are. And also, is there going to be a way to bring dashboard into a status that people can continue to use it whilst not having to be concerned about the underlying framework it's built on no longer being supported. So I just mentioned there are some alternatives. So why am I talking about Dashboard today? As I've mentioned, Dashboard is incredibly popular. What's good about it being popular is there's so much content out there. So there's videos and written content and people doing webinars around how to use Dashboard, which certainly I have learned so much from over the past few years. Also, there's quite a big community of people building custom nodes which you can use within Dashboard. So there might be, I was looking at one earlier this week that for home automation creates an interface that looks very similar to a Nest thermostat. So somebody's thought, oh, it would be good if you could make your home thermostat on your phone look very similar to Nest's. And they've built that in a way that can work within Dashboard. So there's lots of additional pieces of functionality that you can install into Dashboard, which just adds to the value it delivers. It's a bit of a jack of all trades. Hopefully that saying translates to wherever people are around the world. What I mean by that is it's quite good at doing almost everything, but it's not amazing at doing some particular things. One particular example might be the way in which it deals with responsive design is often put forward as it could be better, most definitely. What I like about it is it will do a pretty good job of almost everything I want from a dashboard, almost everything. And I feel that that's a good compromise. There are other alternatives that you could consider. One would be UI Builder, another one would be FlexDash. I wrote an article a couple of months ago that's on our blog. I don't know if Ian's got that URL, perhaps he can drop it into the chat, comparing the three, what I see as the three most popular ways to develop dashboards. Just because I'm focusing on Dashboard here, I don't think anyone should discount the other two. They really do have some strengths, and also they're under quite significant developments and new features being added into them all the time. So, you know, I hope that the very kind people behind those projects who, you know, do most of the work entirely just to improve them, you know, rather than as a day job, continue to do so, because I think, you know, choice is really good. One last point that I think is quite positive about Dashboard, when I was first looking for a solution to build dashboards, was it's just quite easy to get an example up and running. And I hope that you will see today that getting to the point where you can actually be, okay, yeah, I can see I've got something that I can access through the internet, and maybe it's not showing really useful information yet, but I can see that I can show information. Really helps people to take an iterative approach from there on. So you get something that's a proof of concept, then make it a bit better, then a bit better, and before you know it, I think it's, you know, really entirely possible for people with a reasonable grasp of Node-RED to be building some quite featureful dashboards using Dashboard. Right then, so let's get to actually building some stuff. So I'm going to be running the instance of Node-RED, which I'm demonstrating from in FlowForge. So FlowForge is the company I work for. Hopefully you're all aware of it. FlowForge makes it really easy to run Node-RED instances in the cloud and provides lots of amazing tools around Node-RED to make it a lot more suitable for a commercial environment. For me, it's just an easy place to run it. Everything I'm showing will run out fine. So you can do the same in pretty much any way you would be hosting Node-RED anyway that I'm aware of, certainly. So it's not that these things are just FlowForge specific at all. So I'm opening up a Node-RED instance. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to demo is just showing some basic data within a dashboard. So first of all, I need some data to show. So I'm going to go into Manage Palette, and I'm going to install a random number generator, which I quite like. It will just generate, each time it receives in a message, a random number between one value and another. So it's something that we can use to graph. I'm also going to install dashboard. Dashboard, this one, and install that. I installed dashboard second because dashboard is actually, whereas random is quite a simple thing, dashboard there's quite a few elements to it, quite a few custom nodes, so it just takes a little bit longer to install. So let's get on with using random whilst we're waiting for dashboard to install. So first of all, I'm just going to check I can generate a random number. So I'm going to output it to a debug. So I want a number between 0 and 100. If we deploy that and then check the debug, every time I press this button, there we go. They look believably like random numbers, which is great. Fantastic timing. So this here is showing that all of the elements dashboard have just finished installing and now available within this instance of Node-RED. So we can see them all down here, which is great. First of all, let's just do a simple graph. I think that's a great place to start, or chart, as it's called. So I'm going to link up this random number generator to this node, which will put a chart into my dashboard. I'm going to double click on that so I can edit it. I'm going to, so you can group together the elements of your chart into groups and tabs. So for now, I'm just going to press this pen once and then twice, and that will just create defaults. So that's what I've done there. I've created a default group and a default tab. So, right, other things I'm going to look at. I want this graph to show data for the past minute, which what I've selected there. I can allow it to set its own y-axis, but I'm going to say, because I know that all the values are between 0 and 100. Then the last thing I'm going to do is, rather than having to sit here and press this button, I'm going to set this inject node to automatically inject a random number every second. Okay, so if we deploy that, so I've now created my dashboard, but where can I see it, or where can we see it? So if I copy this URL here, so where I'm editing, and this is pretty much the same, even if you're running Node-RED on a Pi or in some sort of cloud hosting, it's pretty much the same. You might say, if you're using a Pi, see that you have a port number after here, but the process is the same. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to create a new tab. I'm going to paste it in, and then after this question mark, I'm going to put UI. Sorry, where the question mark was, I'm going to put UI. And this will give us that dashboard. I'm going to post this in chat. One quite good thing about these dashboards is, well, certainly being that FlowForge is on the internet rather than hosted locally on a network, this is now available. So I want to post to everybody, and I have hopefully got that right. So yeah, if you follow that URL, you should now be able to see exactly what I've got on screen. And as we're working on it, yeah, see the changes that are happening. So if that's not working, perhaps let us know in the chat. And yeah, Ian, please let me know, but that should be working fine for everybody. So this is the chart of data that I'm showing on my screen. And you can now see, if you've opened this up on a browser yourself, it's, yeah, these random numbers between 100 and 0. What we will see is now we've been running it for more than 1 minute, as new data has been added over here, because this chart lasts for 1 minute, I think is what I set it to. The old data is being removed from this side as well. So that's just a really simple way to show a chart. So what I'm going to do to make this a bit easier for me to work now is I'm going to move this over here a bit like this is a mobile phone screen. And then I'm going to move my editor like that, so I can see both what I'm building here as well as making the edits here. So next useful thing might be a way to clear down the data. So what if, say, this has got some spurious data in it, or you just want to clear it back down and only have new data? So I can do that if I'm going to create a button here, which goes into here. So it goes into the chart. And then what I need to do is pass it a payload of JSON empty object. This is explained in the So if, I don't know if everyone knows this, but if you select a particular node in your flow, you for most nodes, you will get quite a good explanation of how it works. So this thing I'm doing here is inputting message payload blank array will clear the chart. So there's often quite good help in there. So, but if I now deploy this and just wait for the chart to reload. So if I press this button, the chart will now clear down. And then because we're getting new data every second, we can see that starts to now repopulate. So what about if it's one thing to be able to clear down the data from here, but maybe we want to be able to clear the data down using an element actually within the interface that everyone can access. So I'm going to add a button. So I'm going to put it up here because it's doing something similar to this. This red triangle means I need to do some configuration. So I'm going to double click. And what it basically wants to know is which group, which dashboard it should be this part of. So I've only got one, so it's the default. So I just need to open that up. And then I can just press done. But actually, there's something else I want to configure in here. When someone presses this button, I want this to send the payload the same as we had before. So same as this is doing, and put that down into the chart. So if I now deploy this, get a helpfully titled button called button, and someone's going to press it because I've definitely done it right. Thank you, whoever you were. And someone else and someone else. I definitely know this is going to happen throughout this demonstration, and it's totally fine. Please feel free to troll me. But it's not a very descriptive title. So let's call it something like oops, if I could capitalize things well, the data. Okay, and then I'm going to deploy that. And now it's just a slightly more informative button than just, yeah, something that just says button. Okay, so currently we're just showing one line of data, but one of these charts can actually show multiple lines of data. So let's create a way to get another series of data into here and see how we can show that. So what I'm going to do is add in a form, a text form. So this allows somebody who's looking at the dashboard to put in, you know, whatever text inputs they might need to. There's various different, yeah, I think it's got support for text, email, passwords, etc., etc. So this one is going to be score. This is what I'm going to call this. And this is going to be a number. Okay, cool. So if I press done on that, so I'm just going to hook up a debug to that so we can see what's happening and deploy that. So if anyone will be so kind to, I've already stopped you writing any words, but if someone wants to put in a score, thank you, kind assistant. So we can see that somebody put in a score of 10 because it's appeared in the debug over here. Thank you, thank you, thank you all. So this is allowing us to take, rather than just say a button press, as we had in the first example, we're taking that data in and yeah, multiple people can interact with it simultaneously in this particular case. So, but what I want to do now is get that data onto this chart. So how are we going to do that? The first thing I want to do is, so somebody can give us a score of 1000. Look at that perfect timing. Thank you. Yeah. So, but actually, I want this score to just be out of 100. So it's the same range as what we've got already. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a switch node to ignore any scores which are outside of the range that I want. I don't know of a way, you know, if I start to, so if I try and write hello in here, it says, no, you can't do that. It understands that the input needs to be numeric. But what I don't know, and what would be great, maybe there's a way to do this and someone else knows, would be a way for it to reject if I put in 120, because I can say, no, you shouldn't be able to accept numbers out of that range. So we're going to, 120 is going to work, and also minus numbers indeed. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to evaluate the input to see whether it is between 0 and 100. So what's switch nodes allowed to do? And so again, there are certain things that I'm talking about. I'm hoping it's fair to assume most people have a reasonable grasp of using Node-RED, and they're now looking at using dashboards. But yeah, so I will explain things as well. So a switch node allows you to say, what does something equal, or is it equal to a particular thing, or greater than, less than, etc., and then send out the message on one wire or the other. So if I now put otherwise, what we will get is the score in the range. So we see now we've got this is the score in the range, and if I now hook up two debugs over here, like so, and now deploy. So what we should find now is, I'll leave it switched on, but if someone wants to put in an invalid and a valid score, thank you, submitter of 22. Okay, cool. So we can see that 22, no, I've done something wrong here. This is interesting. These are all coming out. You see, as I roll over here, they're coming. This is the bottom box. I can't point at it at the same time. But you see the orange checks around it. That means that's where those messages are ending up. So I've done something wrong because it thinks 22 is an invalid score and 10, but they should be valid. So I know what it is. So I'm evaluating message.payload, but actually this score is stored in message.payload.score. So this is what I need to be evaluating in this switch node. So what I'm going to do, if you hover over one of these values, this really can save you time. This thing over here, if I copy path, that is copied, that's in message.payload.score. Now, if I come back in here and change this message.payload to and paste message payload score. Okay. So now, if people want to chuck in some scores again, we should start to see that 200 has ended up at the bottom, but 3.14, that number rings a bell, ends up on the top. So it's now rejecting all of these other than 20 is valid, 3.14 is valid, 50 will be valid. And we can see as I mouse over the debug that they're ending up on different paths. So that's great. So now I've got on this wire here, only the scores which are between 0 and 100. Okay. So the next thing is, if we look back at this chart currently, that's an interesting score. I'd be fascinated to know how somebody put that in, but I won't go down that rabbit hole right now. So the next, currently this chart, it doesn't have a legend, it's just one set of data. So what we now want to do is change this so this can show two different sets of data at the same time. So what I need to do is give each data type, so either the random number or these scores, a name. So I do that if I put in a change node. I can then set message.topic, which is the topic of the data, to be scores. Okay. And then there's now quite a few wires here. So I need to put this on the right wire. And I'm going to copy that. And so I did a copy and paste there. So that's now an identical copy of that. If I drag it up here and drop it on that wire, you see it's gone to the hashed checkered lines. It wires it in there. So, and then I just need to open this up and change this to be random. Okay, and then I now we want this data to also go into the chart over here. And I think, yes, maybe somebody give me a score. How good is this? That's working. Have I done this wrong? Why can't I see anything? I feel like I've done something wrong. I'm going to add on the legend. So if I now, go into this chart, I can switch on the legend to show, well, rather than explain. I feel like I broke something because, thank you for clearing it down. That was a very good idea, whoever did that. So, because we're getting random through, but are we getting scores through? Oof. No. What am I doing wrong? Give me, it's the same as before. So the chart expects the values to be in message.payload, but through this form, they're still in message.payload.score. So I'm going to use this same change node because you can change multiple things in here. So we were setting the message.topic to scores. What I also need to set is message payload to be message.payload.score. And I'm now very confident, definitely going to work. Yes. Give me more scores. Yeah. It's kind of hard to see. Hopefully that's, it might be better for those of you who've got this open in a browser. So we can see that the scores are this light blue and the random numbers dark blue. Let's say that the scores are much more important. So what I can do if sorry, I should explain what I'm doing. I've double clicked on the chart node. I'm now going to change the color. So this is basically in order of the series. So we've only got two. We've got dark blue and light blue. So I'm going to change this to be a very light blue. And I'm going to change this to be a very, very vivid green. Almost painful. And what we should now see is it's a lot easier to see the scores. Maybe not. Kind of. Could be better. But yeah, we can now hopefully see a little bit more clearly, as well as referencing the legend above, which one of those lines. So, I mean, other than the getting into whether it becomes too busy to look at the data, sometimes you might want to put things on different charts. You can overlay lots of different values over each other. So how else can we view this data? So we've now got the random data coming in, we've got the scores. What are some other useful ways to view the data? So a gauge is one really good way to view this data. So I'm going to drop in a gauge. I'm going to drop in two. So the first gauge is going to be showing exactly the same as the random number. So yeah, sorry, I feel like I could make these, hopefully I can get rid of that debug. I might make it a bit clearer. Yeah, that's a bit better. I don't like when wires cross over each other. So this gauge is going to receive the same information in from here, from the random number generator, that is. And then this gauge is going to receive, well, I'm going to put it underneath, but it's receiving the information from the form. So as I said before, this red triangle means there's something we need to configure. What I need to do is to put them into a group. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new group this time, and I'm just going to call this 2 because I'm not very creative. Okay, and then this second gauge I'm also going to put on 2. And then let's just have a look at what we've got. Okay, so we've got some gauges. They need work, but then they need titles to start with, well, let's make these a bit more useful. So first of all, the title isn't very useful. So this top one, I'm going to change it to be called random. Also, I'm going to change the range to be 0 to 100. So let's just deploy that to see what we've achieved there. Okay, so it's interesting, random's actually the bottom one, but yeah, we'll show how to change the order in a little bit. So we can see now this makes a bit more sense. I don't know, you might say that 100 might be the best. This kind of assumes that 0 is good from the coloration and 100 is bad. You can change the color gradients here. So you could switch it round. So you have red on the left-hand side and green on the right. And that would mean that when it gets up towards 100, that's considered a good score. So this one is score. This is going to be 0 to 100. Let's have a look at that. Okay. And yeah, as people are, thank you for continuing sending in scores. That's really helpful. So we can now see we've got these two to gauges, which are representing the same data that we've got up here. Now, so far we're looking everything at, so looking a little bit perhaps at how dashboard deals with responsive design a little bit. When currently these are all in a vertical stack, just like they're on a mobile phone. But hopefully, if I've done this right, yes. Okay, so if you now, and some of you, I suppose, you probably didn't have it in a thin window as I did, already saw this, but now you can move it the other way. As I stretch this out horizontally, we can see that the elements in 2 will move to be by the side of the elements in default. We could give these better titles, absolutely, but hopefully you understand what's happening here. So by putting these into a separate group, they will, when there's enough horizontal space, they will move here. It's making me twitch a little bit that that's not quite in line with there, but yeah, you can play around to try and get these so they will look neat either on like a desktop format or on a mobile phone. Okay, so let's look at picking out some high scores. And so I'm going to move this back now, back to one column like that. So let's now look at picking out some high scores. And so far, whatever data is coming through, we are showing that data in the gauges and in the chart. But what about if we want to know the extremes? So if this was, say, monitoring temperature, you want to know the hottest piece of machinery has been, or whatever that might be. So how might we do that? So I'm going to take, I'm going to get rid of that debug to create a bit more space. So I'm going to take from here. So here we've got the scores that are coming through from the form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a switch node. So I'm taking that score out, sorry, to be clear, it's these scores here. So the ones that you guys are sending in, that's what I'm now going to look at. Okay. And what I'm going to say in a switch node, so switch allows me to evaluate something, is something true, in which case do something else or don't do something else. So I'm going to say, is the score that's coming through, is it greater than, and you'll see hopefully in a minute how this works, flow.score. Okay. So this is basically saying, is this score greater than flow.score? And if it is, it will continue out of this Y. But what is flow.score? So at the moment that doesn't exist. So what so if we get here, we're going to use change and we're going to set flow score. So set flow.score to equal message.payload. So basically it's saying, if this is a higher score, save this as the new highest score for later. And then when the next message comes through, it will be comparing it to the score, which is the highest score. There's one more thing I need to do before I demonstrate this. When we first deploy this flow doesn't have a flow.score set. So what I'm going to do is on deploy, I'm going to set a flow score of 0. So it basically starts with 0. Whenever someone submits a score which is greater than 0, and also, well, greater than the current flow score, it will output on this Y here. So I'm getting pretty close to actually showing something practical here, I assure you. So what we want to do is set, hang on, no, I just want an input here. I'm going to change, and I'm going to set flow.score to be 0. Okay, I don't need a debug. And I'm going to, so up here, we were setting this inject to run every second. This one, I'm going to inject after, so on deploy, 1/10 of a second after deploy, it will send a message here, we'll set flow score to be 0. So now I'm going to put debug so we can see what's going on and close that off and deploy. Okay, so now, probably, hopefully, if we get scuts, so we've got a current score of 9, I'm going to just put in 100. So we saw 100. Did we see 3? Yeah. 100 was an awful thing for me to put in because now nobody can put in a score higher than 100. So I'm just going to redeploy. So maybe people start on low scores. So we should only see now ascending numbers here. So 20. Then if someone puts something a bit higher than 20, we should see that. But what we shouldn't see is anything lower. Yeah, 23, 25. So what this is now calculating is, and you quickly will get up to a point where you're stuck at 100, as I did immediately a second ago, stupidly. It will continue to increase up. So we now know what the highest score is that anyone's given. Whoever just tried the reset, it won't reset the flow score. I could show you how to do that. I don't know if that's what you were wondering, but this highest score is being stored outside of the reset button that we tried. So this is great. We've got this here. And you're all being very cooperative with the small increments you're putting in. Thank you. But let's actually make it available to the users of the dashboard. So let's use a notification. I really like these. So let's I think I should just be able to deploy this. And then if you guys, or I'll do one myself. Okay, scores 1. Scores 61. So now, depending on if you've got this on a desktop resolution, you will see they appear in the top right-hand corner. If you're working on mobile resolution, they're going to be, it moves them down to the bottom of the page, which is quite handy. It's not all that useful yet, but what we've basically created is a pop-up, which is saying we've now hit a new high score, an amount that we've never seen before. We've never seen anything higher than that before. So, but what else can we do with that? Well, so these are automatically dismissing. So what's quite good, if I go, sorry, I should explain what I'm doing. So I've gone into the notification dashboard node, clicked on that, changed the layout to be OK/cancel dialog. I'm going to deploy that. And what we should see now is that, so it now appears in the middle of the screen. Now, if someone gives another score, it will dismiss this one. And then, there you go. So it basically shows in the middle of the screen, this is, the highest score that we've received so far. I can dismiss it by pressing OK, that's fine. But what that allows you to start to create is something where maybe if somebody needs to take a particular action, so if it might be a piece of a sensor isn't working, or a piece of machinery is too hot, whatever it might be, it's one way to put that on screen and allow the person who's using this dashboard to say, yes, I've seen that. I'm aware that currently the highest score is 31. But the way it's written isn't all that useful. It just scores 40. What does that mean? So let's try and make that a little bit more user-friendly. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to use a custom node I really like called string. What string allows us to do is to manipulate strings. So it allows us to prepend and append and do lots of other things to strings. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to turn, rather than just the score saying, just saying scores 41, I'm going to put it into a sentence. So that's now installed. There it is. Lovely. Okay, so I dropped it onto the wire between here and here, so it's automatically inserted it. I'm going to open up string. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to prepend the string wow. We have a new score. It is, and then I'm going to put a space because we want a space before where we're inserting the number from the scores. And then I'm going to append an exclamation mark. So that will come after the number. So then if I press done and deploy, what we will hopefully get now, I won't make you guys do that. Okay, where we have a new score, it is 10. So yeah, I mean, you could provide a lot more information there, and I feel that context is really useful for whoever's using this interface, rather than just the score is 12. It's like, this means this is a new score. This is something that we've not seen before. So yeah, I think that's quite, I really like being able to add these dialogues. I think it's changed the way I thought about, yeah, bringing attention to particular scenarios. So, you know, within the data, rather than someone having to study the graph or study the gauges, it's like, oh, new score of 32. That's something that's important. So the last thing I'm going to cover, I've just got a few more minutes, but this is perhaps a little bit more advanced, but I think this is certainly something that I struggled with for a while when I first used dashboards. So the data that we're seeing within these graphs is stored within this node here, okay? So what that means is we're not having to, I'm definitely gonna, I really appreciate people putting in scores, but I'm just going to move you to the bottom of the page. So rather than each time this chart gets updated, us having to write a flow which sends in all of these different data points, what happens is the chart node stores all the data points you've already sent in, and each time a new one comes in, it sends out all of the data points out on this wire here. So I'm just going to look at that. I'm going to drop in debug here and deploy that. And I'm going to have to hide that debug because that will become really hard to read. And now I'm going to stop this one. Okay, so all of these are the output from this chart. So if I go to the bottom one and into here, so we have series, data and labels, series. So we've got our scores and our random values. The data is the actual data that's populating that chart. So at that point, we just have one score of 32. Oh, the X is a Unix timestamp where the standard way that Node-RED deals with time. I think it's a number of milliseconds since the 1st of January 1970. I'm sure that makes sense for why that is. So it's basically saying at this point of time, the score was 32. If we look into the random numbers, now we're getting 57 values. So we're getting a lot more data, and we can go in and see any of these values and the point in time which they happened. So what's useful about that? And I have today on a blog, I've published an article going into this quite a lot more. What's useful about that is here we've got a minute of data, but what if your chart's got 6 months of data? If you just rely on it being stored in this chart, what if something goes wrong with your Node-RED instance? Or what if you need to copy this flow to different, hosting it a different place? You would lose that data unless you were very careful. But what this output allows you to do is to write that really easily to file. And I will just show this. So I'm going to use, these nodes here are specific to FlowForge, but they are basically identical to the file in and file in nodes, which you get in standard Node-RED. So I'm going to do write file here. And then I'm going to call this data.json. You can call it anything. I'm just calling it JSON because that's how this data is formatted, but you can call it anything you want. And then over here, I'm going to prove that's worked, I'm going to read a file and output it to a debug. Okay, and so we don't need anything to be passed in. We just need a trigger. And this is going to read data.json and output it to a debug. So if I now clear this all down, so now as data's coming in, either from the random number generator or from the scores, it's been written to this file. And hopefully if I run this down here, we get, it's not quite perfect. That's just output the text. What I want to do is format that into using the JSON. So this is going to translate it back into exactly the same format as we saw it a moment ago. So if I deploy that and run that, we now, I've done something wrong. I was doing so well. I got right to the end. I'm not going to try and fix that right now. It's probably really obvious to somebody what, I think I know what I've done wrong. I need to overwrite the file. And now it should work. Yes. So that's now read back out of that file And we can see, although I just cleared it down, so there's not a whole load of data. So if you have access to your file system, that would allow you to copy it somewhere else, keep that data safe, maybe look at something to back that up to a separate location into a database or whatever might seem right for your usage. That's everything I had to talk about today. Hopefully Ian here's Ian. Hello there.
Hello, Rob.
Hello. So I think hopefully we've got some questions, but I will hand over to Ian and sip my tea for a moment.
Yeah, no, great presentation, Robin. I loved the interactiveness of everyone participating and providing value. So thank you for that. So there's two questions very similar, and I think we should just kind of handle these off the top about kind of the future of Node-RED dashboard and kind of what's the recommendation. So there's one question about kind of, is it safe to continue using dashboard or should migrate to UI Builder and FlexDash, and also just kind of what's the long-term kind of support for Node-RED dashboard. So do you want to take that, or you go first?
Yeah. So first of all, I can only give my opinion because I'm not in control. We're not in control of. These are all open source projects, and it's down to the really kind people who give their time for free to keep them running and to improve them. So I suspect that if you use dashboard in its current version, so the version I've been demoing today, that most probably it will still work fine in 5 years' time. I suspect that's the case. What might cause a problem is if there is a serious bug found in the underlying framework, and that's something that, even though that framework is now no longer developed, nobody actually decides to fix it because maybe it's a small thing. So I'm certainly confident enough to keep using it, but there is a certain amount of risk in that. I think we are having conversations that currently internally FlowForge, and last week we were talking about this, about, is there a way to make it so dashboard can continue to be maintained, but that may well be putting quite a bit of work into it up front. So yeah, I can't give anyone a cast iron guarantee, but I suspect it will be okay to use for a period of time, probably into years. Ian, have you got any? Yeah, I mean,
no. I would just echo that. It kind of certainly, we want to make sure everyone realizes that it's not supported, but lots of people still continue to use it, and we're comfortable doing a webinar on how to use it, right? So we expect people will continue to use it. In the long term, though, we're certainly interested in hearing people's input and feedback on what are the requirements on the next generation of Node-RED dashboard. And kind of, so if you do have comments or thoughts, certainly send us an email, open an issue, a FlowForge issue, where with a feature request, that would be perfectly appropriate for that. But yeah, so sorry, we don't have a definitive answer here, but it's certainly something we're trying to track. So I'm going to kind of move on. So can the chart kind of display historical data like the past week or month? So I think you actually showed that, but this is Andrew was asking this. I just want to make sure we kind of did answer his question. So Andrew, I'm going to kind of turn your mic on. Let me just so did Rob answer your question kind of throughout the presentation, or did you have a follow-up question that you'd like to ask?
Yeah, I think he addressed it. I guess just in terms of if you wanted to show long-term data sets, would this be the tool, or is it better just to use something completely different, like I guess tapping into a database like Influx or something?
I think this is perfectly suitable. I think I use this myself for using long-term data sets. Yeah, I mean, hopefully I touched a little bit on the importing or exporting of data here. So you could just bring in an outside file with 5 years worth of data points, as long as it's formatted in this way, and just import that into a dashboard. One thing that I've seen you should be considering in that is, whereas the resolution of data right now, you might want every second or every 10 seconds or every minute, hour, probably looking at longer term data, finding a way to chop it down to, you know, like say 1 data point per hour or per day or per week might be appropriate. And because these dashboards can get very busy if you have 1 second resolution of data going back for a long period of time. But no, I think it's totally suitable for, I've seen it used to express data into years and do a good job of it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. So Michelle has a question. Are there options to modify the design of the dashboard?
There definitely are. I didn't want to, I wondered if that might be something, well, I had limited time. It'd definitely be something that I could talk about for an hour. Some of the very simple things you can do. So if I open up, so if I pull out this sidebar bit and then go into dashboard and go into theme. So very simple things, change light to dark, as we're all now used to seeing, things for when after the sun's gone down. So that's my personal preference. I tend to have all my dashboards like that because I just find that easier on the eyes, easier to read the data. But what we also had in there was the option to add custom. So I'm now going to design something which is awful, and I apologize, but here we go. So the base, well, actually, let's first of all just see how it will look if I don't change anything. Okay, so, but now if I want to change this base color to be this beautiful purple, for instance. Yeah, so it's already looking beautiful. So that's a very simplistic way to do it. The next level up from that will be, so you can use CSS to style your dashboards. It's not something that I'm going to try and demo right now because it's a little bit more involved. But I've seen some great examples. You can't make it look, it's not like you just have a completely blank canvas where you can design it to look however you want, but you can definitely make this, say, fit in with a pre-existing visual design that you might be using as an organization or an individual. And, you know, so you can round off these corners. I've seen people doing nice drop shadows. Yeah, so there definitely are some options. I would search for CSS for Node-RED dashboard. I've seen some pretty good video tutorials that take you through a proof of concept in 10 minutes to get you started on that path.
Okay, and Michelle, I opened your mic. If does that kind of answer your question? Or I know it's a very in-depth question, but does that give you the good pointers, or is there another kind of follow-up question that you have? And you don't have to talk, so. Okay, we'll move on. Question, how do I create heat maps in Node-RED, for example, to keep track of problematic nodes where the processes take a long time to load? Okay, so I've not tested this, but I am pretty sure there is a additional node you can add. I think it's this one. So I'm probably, if I try, you know, I want to give everyone time to answer questions, but I was reading an article a couple of weeks ago about this, showing demonstrations, and it was basically allowing you to fire in X and Y coordinates, and it was building a heat map accordingly. I'm really tempted to try and do it right now, but I'm not going to. But so that, to be clear, sorry, was this one, Node-RED Contrib UI heat map, and I will try and work out how to. I'll just drop that into the chat. Okay, I just put it in. Brilliant. Thanks, Ian. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Actually, someone else had already put it in the chat, but just to the host. So, all right. Can I use Node-RED with the Kentucky Kuja simulator? I'm going to have to put my hands up and say I don't know what that is, I'm afraid. So. Yes, sorry guys, I'd be happy to. I don't know if so Kentucky is a platform kind of an operating system, but actually let me just see if I can find the person who, Pramod, I'm going to allow you to talk just to, if you have a kind of follow-up or clarification. If you want to, but you certainly don't have to.
Hello.
Yes, yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, actually, I want to use Quantic in background with the Node-RED simulator. So Quantic is Koja simulator is a network simulator, and this Node-RED is a scenario simulator. So can I do that?
Yeah, I mean, Ian, I can talk in general terms. If you can get the data out into MQTT, or if you can get it into an API, which you can then pull data in to Node-RED, then wherever that data is, whatever it might be, you can do. But it's just not technology I have used, so I can't answer more specifically than that. I don't know if you can, Ian.
No, unfortunately not. So, so my suggestion would be go to the Node-RED forum and ask there. So you probably look at a wider range of people that might be able to help you there. So,
Yeah.
There was a question from Matthew Russell. It's kind of is the recording. So the recording absolutely will be available. We'll email a link out to everyone, hopefully within the next 24 hours. So yeah, so I think the point was Rob was going pretty fast. There's a lot of content here, so it's sometimes hard to keep up.
I apologize.
No, it's great content. So so any last minute questions? I think we're coming to the end of this.
Just on that, Ian, I mean, so I can export all of this flow and I will find a way. Ian, if we'll find a way, I don't know whether we post it on the YouTube video, whatever is appropriate, but this can be imported. And as long as you install the correct custom nodes, this will, you guys can actually then interact with this flow and view it running, on your own Node-RED instance. So hopefully that will help a bit. Yeah, I'm trying to get the balance of showing good stuff. So I appreciate that I was going a bit fast. So just trying to share the good stuff with everyone in the hour.
No, I think sharing the flow would be really helpful too. So,
yeah.
All right, and just I know there were some chats, questions on the chats about the kind of the alternatives, and it's UI Builder and FlexDash would be the alternatives. I will see if I can quickly find that article.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think they all have strengths. The article probably sums it up much well. I don't want to make it overly simplistic. The article goes into detail. They all have strengths. And what's good about the other two is they're continuously being developed. For some scenarios, you will find them better. Yeah, my preference and what I still recommend at this moment in time is Dashboard, but there's some great development going on with FlexDash and UI Builder, and you can interact with on the Node-RED forums that Ian mentioned a few moments ago. You can interact with the teams, the developers who are working on those. So you actually, potentially have the ability to make suggestions about where you would hope to see those projects go, or even contribute yourselves if you want, which is what makes this all happen. Yeah,
for sure. So thank you, Rob, for the great presentation. When you sign off, you'll be presented a survey. It's a 3-question survey. It'd be great if people can kind of provide us feedback on the webinars. And thank you everyone for joining us. We do this on a monthly basis, so we'll have another one coming out near the end of June. So I hope you can join us then. So thank you and have a great rest of the day, everyone. Goodbye.
Thanks everyone. Bye.